Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR. We're presented and brought to you by FanDuel. We have Zack Guggenheim here with us once again to be talking about the Big Ten here with us tonight. The 5 Big Ten teams that we think are most likely to make the playoffs that did not make it last year. So Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, sorry this episode. Although the playoffs do remember you from last year, you'll not be mentioned as much in this episode because we're going to try to project if the Big Ten can get some more teams in. The SEC is going to 9 conference games, and they're scared. They're scared, Zach. You got Alabama wanting to cancel the Ohio State game coming up. Texas is canceling the Arizona State game in like 2031, 2032, whatever that might be. I don't know if they're actually scared or not, because I'm sure some Big Ten teams are canceling some of these games as well. But it fits my narrative to say that they're scared. So that's what we'll go with. But we have Zack Guggenheim.
It fits Kurt Cignetti's narrative too.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, and the thing is, Cignetti, he's not even scared. He's just like, yeah, I don't do it. You know, like, why? What's the point in doing it? It's not that he's scared. He's just like, what's the point? So,
exactly.
All right.
I was gonna say, Sam the man. I was gonna say, Sam the man. He's hitting us up. Excited to have you, Sam.
Appreciate you being here once again. And Max here also with us once again. Says, will YouTube crash again during tonight's stream? Did it crash for you? Didn't crash for me. That's unfortunate. I know StreamYard's been having issues with Twitter, so hopefully they're not having issues with the what's it called? YouTube. The thing I'm on right now.
we are getting comments from YouTube, so that's a good sign.
Yes. Max also says Bill and Doug's show from earlier today had a similar topic on potential Big Ten teams making the playoffs this coming year. Listen, Bill and Doug are 2 of the best out there doing it with everything they do. I can only hope to aspire to be as good as Bill and Doug in what they do right now. They were the guys that used to do, what was it called? Kings of the North, right?
North, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and they do a great job.
Doug came on the show last season. Did us a solid. So we should see if we can get them on at some point. That'd be a fun collab.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Billy Tuesday here says, hi, gents. Hello, Billy Tuesday. Appreciate you being here. Max says YouTube crashed for millions of people earlier tonight. Holy cow. Yeah, I did not get that one. That is crazy. I was watching Greg earlier tonight. So, and that does bring up, I do need to apologize. We did not have an episode Tuesday morning, the podcast episode Tuesday morning for whatever reason, or not for whatever reason, because Greg was unfortunately not feeling well. And so we were not able to record an episode last night. I tried to put together an episode last night, and I'll be honest, I fell asleep as I was making my notes. So when I woke up at midnight, I said, you know what, instead of trying to go up there and do a show, probably best just to go to sleep. So sorry there was no Tuesday morning podcast, but I am going to try to reschedule with Greg and hopefully get him on.
So nice.
All right.
Was I muted all of a sudden?
Yeah, I'm coming in echoing behind you again. So yeah, might need to have you mute again whenever you're not talking. So
let's try now.
Okay. All right. Hopefully that works.
Does it sound better now?
Yes, I think so. I think it sounds better. I'll let you know if not.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah. Live fixing technical difficulties. Sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. Spoiler, it won't be Purdue. Need to watch the video. You're welcome. Well, still watch the video, but yes, you are correct. Neither of us have Purdue as a most likely team to make the playoffs.
I may have made a switch last minute.
Oh.
No, I didn't. Well, no. Northwestern and Northwestern Purdue are my playoff dark horses. There we go.
Kurt says, sorry, I'm late. Did you guys have my lowly Gophers in the Natty? No, sorry. No Gophers in the Natty.
I will say Minnesota, that they're not in my in my top 5, but if there was ever no, never mind. Looking at their schedule, I was like, oh, they have a fairly easy schedule at Indiana, at Penn State. Okay, never mind. I withdraw my thought.
I truly think there's only 1, maybe 2 easy schedules in the Big Ten this year.
And we're probably going to talk about both of them tonight.
Well, no. Wisconsin's the other easy one.
We're going to talk about one of them tonight.
So,
well, there's a couple other easier schedules, but I think it's not super easy.
Yeah. All right. So the way this is going to work, appreciate everybody being here. Can't get through every single comment, but we appreciate all of you being here and some people we haven't seen in a while. So thanks for coming back to the show and listening in. We appreciate it. Zack and I both have a top 5 that we're going to get to. Zack and I, 1 through 4, have the same teams. They're just in different order. So we're going to start from 5 on Zack's list, talk about each team. I'll let you know where I have them on my list. And then at the end, my number 5 team differs from Zack's list. And so we'll talk about my number 5 team here at the end. But Zack, let's go ahead and start with your number 5 team, top 5. This is not the team you have that's most likely, but this is the 5th most likely team you have to make the college football playoffs out of the Big Ten that did not make it last year. The Michigan State Spartans with Pat Fitzgerald as their head coach. Zack, give us your thought process.
And everybody just turned off the video because what is this knucklehead talking about? So before I was going to be like, don't show the logo yet. Don't show the logo, but you show the logo.
My bad.
That's all right. No, we just kind of jumped in. So I think as I thought through the top 5, I think schedule really matters. And I think that matters more than anything else, even more than maybe talent. And then do I trust your coaching staff? The other thing you have to understand, we're taking Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana out of that. And I think we would all agree that they're all at least projected to make they're heavy favorites to make the playoff next year. Regardless if they do or not, all 3 are viewed to be playoff caliber teams again next year. And so a question you really have to ask is, A, are you good enough to beat those teams, or do you not play those teams? That's a big deal. Michigan State plays one of them. Now they do play at Notre Dame. That's another playoff caliber team. They might be the number 1 team in the country, but it's at Notre Dame. That's a very forgivable loss. And then they play Oregon at home. They play Washington at home. That's a big deal. And then their other toughest road game is at Michigan, which is a rivalry game. Now, they also play at UCLA, which I thought, if I'm doing a 5, who's my 5th team? I kind of thought UCLA was the other one. But I think if Michigan State gets things turned around, which I think Pat Fitzgerald can do, they have an outside shot. Now, there's a reason why they're 5. At this point, they would be my 8th most likely team to make the playoff. So this is not they're definitely going to do it. This is if things fall right. They have an easy schedule, easier schedule. They get a lot of toss-up games at home. Illinois, Northwestern. I think Washington could be a toss-up. I know people are high on Washington. There's some bad vibes coming out of Seattle, in my opinion. So that's a toss-up game. They get them at home. And then at Michigan, who knows? So I don't love their chances, but I think with Pat Fitzgerald steering the ship, I think you could see a 10-2 season. And that I think is at least in the conversation for the playoff. If they get to 10-2, I wouldn't pick it, but I think there's an outside shot.
Yeah. So right now, when we're talking about the 5th team here, you have to understand we're talking about top half of the Big Ten chances to get into the playoffs type of deal. I can see where you're coming from with the schedule, Zack. November does very much concern me. You're going on the road to Michigan and then Washington and Oregon, granted, both at home. But in addition to that, you're also asking Michigan State to win all of their games against non-tier 1 teams in the Big Ten. I'm not confident they can do that. I'm not trying to disparage Pat Fitzgerald or anything, but you could lose 2 of those 3 games in November at Michigan, Washington, and Oregon and still probably be in. But then you're asking them to beat Notre Dame. You're asking them to win on the road against Wisconsin early on in the year, which, Wisconsin, not exactly a world beater, but still a road game against Wisconsin. If the fans show up and that team's motivated, it's going to be a very tough game. And then on the road against UCLA, wink, wink, UCLA mentioned later on in the show, but I see where you're coming from, but I can't get all the way with you there.
Yeah, like I said, this is why they're 5. To me, there was a very clear top 4, and then 5 was like, I'll tell you who I considered. So UCLA was a consideration. Washington is a consideration, and I think you could make a case for Illinois. I think Illinois' schedule's too hard. I think Washington's schedule's too hard. Like, I know people mentioned Doug and Bill. They got at USC, Iowa at home, Penn State at home, Indiana at home, and at Oregon. And then at Michigan State. And we think Michigan State's at least going to raise up a little bit. Like, that's a brutal schedule, man. And I have a tough time putting Washington there, especially with all the drama. And then UCLA, I know we'll talk about UCLA later. I have the same schedule concerns, but I think UCLA and Michigan State are actually in more of a similar boat. But I agree with you. Like, it's hard to get there on Michigan State, which is why they're 5.
Yeah, it's the combination of schedule and talent, and that's really what you're looking for with these 5 teams. Is you're looking for a team that has the schedule that gives them the opportunity to win 10 games next season, but they also have to have the talent, the coaching, and quite frankly, they need the schedule to work out for them. A team that does not have the schedule work out for them at all is Northwestern, who has a bye week in week 2, faces at Indiana, Penn State, at Oregon, at Ohio State, at Minnesota, Illinois, like Iowa. It's a murderous row for Northwestern, and they're playing one of the best FCS teams. Colorado is not great, but it's still a Power 4 opponent. So yeah. All right. I hear what you're saying on Michigan State. I'm going to respectfully disagree, but I see where you're coming from with it, and I do think that if LeVar Woods is able to get that special teams humming and Pat Fitzgerald is able to do a really good job, then we could see something special with Michigan State. I could see 8 or 9 wins next season.
Yeah, I mean, regardless, if they get 8 or 9 wins, you're talking about a turnaround that really bodes well for East Lansing.
Trojan Fight says, did Michigan State get a QB? Childs left, right? Yes, Childs is gone. He is at Northwestern. Michigan State is rocking with Alessio Milovojevic, I think is how you pronounce it. The guy that came in for him after last season.
Yeah. Which we both agreed that while Childs' ceiling is probably higher, that it's Milovic, right? I'm probably saying that.
Milovojevic or something like that. Yeah. Listen to Matt Sheehan over at Locked On Spartans. He knows exactly how to say it.
Yeah. But like, the offense ran better with him. Like, Childs, I think, really was tantalizing at times, but he's also incredibly frustrating.
It just, he had to do it all himself, it felt like.
Yeah.
And when you get like that, it just, the offense doesn't flow the way it's supposed to. So, yeah. Sam the man asks, why are you concerned with Illinois' schedule? They as far as blue chip, they only play Ohio State and Oregon this year. I do think that Illinois has one of the more desirable schedules in the Big Ten. I'm not going to say it's easy, because you have at Ohio State and Oregon on there, and you also have Iowa too, right? And I don't think at Maryland is a gimme this year. We got our Maryland friend here in the chat with us talking about all the guys they have coming back. Maybe by that time, right before November, Mike Locksley, we'll see what happens with him and everything. But if things go well for Maryland this year, it could be a good year for Maryland. I'm not talking about playoffs or anything like that, but you could see Maryland get to 7 or 8 wins possibly this season, and if they do, they would have to beat Illinois, and they got them coming to them. So it might happen. We'll see.
Yeah. I think my Illinois comment. So Michigan State plays Oregon at home. They do play at Notre Dame. That is tough. I think you're playing several tier 1 and borderline tier 1 and tier 2 schools in the Big Ten. And particularly at Ohio State and Oregon, at Maryland. I think Iowa, and then I think at UCLA too. Like that's a tough game. Now, Michigan State also has UCLA at UCLA. I think the thing that concerns me with Illinois is the loss of Altmaier. Like, I think that is like losing Childs is different than losing Altmaier.
Mm-hmm. Altmaier did a lot for him last year.
Yeah. Like, I think that's a pretty tough loss. Now, if anybody can prove me wrong, it's Brett Bielema. So,
got Bobby Hauck though, or Hauck, I think is how you pronounce it.
Hauck. Yeah,
we were pronouncing it wrong. So,
yeah.
All right, let's get to the next team here. Zach, next team you have on your top 5, and I have this team much higher than you do, but that's okay. Number 4, the Michigan Wolverines.
Yeah. To me, this is all
teams 4 and 5.
Yeah. To me, for Michigan, the reason why they're so low for me, it's all about schedule, right? Home against Oklahoma, home against Iowa, home against Penn State, home against Indiana, at Oregon, at Ohio State. So here's the thing. They play all 3 of the Big Ten's projected playoff teams next year. 2 of them on the road. 2 of them in the last 3 weeks of the season. And then you've also got to play Penn State, Indiana, Iowa, Oklahoma. You've got to go at least 9-3 to have a shot. And I'm not sure that this roster, I think they're good. Like, I think they're good enough to go 8-4 for sure. Against this schedule, I'm not sure they're good enough to go 9-3 or 10-2. But like, they certainly have enough talent. But the thing that concerns me is the schedule. Like, it's a brutal schedule.
Yeah, third toughest schedule in the Big Ten is where I have Michigan, but I still have them number 1 because I still think year 2 of Bryce Underwood should be a major improvement. You're getting more help for him on the outside with Jamie French, who he was a little immature and stuff in his recruiting, but he's a guy that has a whole lot of talent. So him and Andrew Marsh there on the outside should give them a whole lot more. They have a running back room, Savion Hyder, Jordan Marshall's coming back. They have guys back there in that room, and they have some offensive linemen coming back as well. I think Kyle Whittingham is set up well this next season to go 10-2, 9-3. And the reason why I had Michigan so high is because a lot of these teams that I have on this list here, well, 3 of these teams that we have on the top 5 here are on this Michigan schedule. And these are all 3 teams that I think Michigan should beat. I think Michigan should beat Iowa. I think Michigan should beat Penn State. I think that Michigan should beat Michigan State. All 3 of those games are at home. You get Oklahoma at home, and I know everybody is really high in Oklahoma. I think Michigan would have beat Oklahoma later on in the season once Bryce Underwood started to develop a little bit more and came into his own. I think they would have won if Biff Poggi was the head coach instead of Sharon Moore. I mean, we saw them play differently when Biff Poggi was the head coach than Sharon Moore. So I think this Michigan team with much better coaching is going to be very helpful for them. Another year of Bryce Underwood. As much as, yes, it is a tough schedule, you also have 4 of your 6 toughest games at home. And, yes, you're going to Ohio State, but, Ohio State's they've won 4 of the last 5. Did Ryan Day fix everything the last game? Maybe. We'll have to see. But I'm not gonna say that's a gimme loss for Michigan by any means. So they get Indiana, Penn State, Iowa, Oklahoma, all at home. It's going to be hard to win all of those, but I also don't think it's a given that they're going to lose to both Oregon and Ohio State on the road. So that's why I had them higher.
Yeah, no, and you're not wrong, but who else has maybe the top 5 projected teams of the Big Ten on their schedule?
Well, the top 5 outside of Michigan.
Well, but I think you could make a case that Michigan's outside the top 5.
And USC?
Oh, I didn't. No, sorry, USC.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a tough schedule. Don't get me wrong. You're right.
Yeah.
It's still a tough schedule. But I think of all these teams that I have on the 5 here, I think Michigan's probably got the best coaching and probably has the best talent, in my opinion. And schedule, is tough. I get it, but I feel like if you've got the best coaching, you've got the best talent. You're going to be number 1 on my list.
Do you think Michigan has better talent than USC?
I do. Older talent. I do.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
USC's got good young talent.
Yeah,
I also think Kyle Whittingham's going to get more talent out of his players than Lincoln Riley will.
That's a really good point. I might revise my thought process on this. Yeah. They're definitely in the top 4, and I think 5. There's a massive cutoff between 1 through 4, and then 5.
Yeah.
And at least how I think about it. I'm 1 through 4, it feels like razor thin. 5 is good luck.
Yeah. But I still have USC in I think, what do I have him? 3 or 4? I still have him in my top 5. So it's not like I'm, disparaging USC here or anything like that. I personally believe in Kyle Whittingham more than I do Lincoln Riley.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. That's a good point. I'll give you that one.
A lot of good stuff in the chat. Appreciate everybody being here. Yeah, and USC has a really tough schedule too. They're honestly probably on par with Michigan. So they didn't help themselves very much. All right, let's get to team number 3, which is USC, your number 3 team. Can USC make the playoffs in 2026? They are the number 3 team on your list here. Zach, what are your thoughts on USC?
The one difference is that SC does not have a premier non-conference game to derail them.
Yeah, so as long as they don't add one, which I don't think they are going to add one. I think that's probably going to be a cupcake week 0.
Yeah. Yeah. They should reach out to Bucknell. Bucknell probably needs to fill their schedule. Get beat 70-0. Yeah. Fresno State, Raging Cajuns at Rutgers. No offense to Rutgers, but I think USC covers that. They get Oregon at home and they get Washington at home. They get Ohio State at home. They have to play at Indiana and they have to play at Penn State. Those are the 2 big road games. If you can split those and possibly if you lose to Ohio State, which is I don't think that's a gimme game for Ohio State, but if you lose Ohio State and you split at Penn State and at Indiana, I think you're in. Well, here's the thing. Split Oregon and Ohio State and split the road games. I think you're in.
Yeah, my thing with USC is, number 1, I mean, I just talked about it with Lincoln Riley. I don't need to go over that again. But it is really tough to travel, and I don't think all of that is Lincoln Riley's fault. I think Lincoln Riley did a much better job last year of dealing with that, so I'm going to give him his props there. But, like you said, they're going to beat Rutgers. I mean, they should, but it's also a cross-country trip to Rutgers, Then, a few weeks later, it's a cross-country trip to Penn State. And then 2 weeks after that, albeit a bye in between, they're heading to Wisconsin, and then heading into Indiana and then, at UCLA, but, they're in LA. Deshaun Foster made sure we were aware of that. So although it is at UCLA, it's not exactly a daunting road trip or anything like that. But it's tough for me because I think USC has the talent. I think that Lincoln Riley is developing as a head coach. I'm starting to trust him more, and I'm starting to think that he can do more. Like, I don't think that's a given win for Ohio State by any means. And I think if USC goes out and beats Ohio State, and Ohio State is 10-2, 9-3 next season, that could be the win that lifts them into the playoffs. So for me, I think USC is going to be fine. They just have to win one of either Oregon, Ohio State, or at Indiana. Well, and at Penn State too. That's not a given because it's on the road and everything. But I think this USC team has the talent, obviously, and Lincoln Riley's developing as a coach. But you look at the schedule; it's just with the road trips and the teams that are coming to you, which is better for you. It's tough to see, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not an easy schedule for sure. And I think you make a really good about the amount of travel. You compare it to Michigan. Michigan's one big road trip is at Oregon. Mm-hmm. And that's a really good point. Like, they don't have to travel as far. USC, they have to go to Rutgers, which is I think a 6 or 7 hour flight. They have to adjust to the time zone, and then they come back and play Oregon. That's a tough adjustment. And then you've got to go to Happy Valley, which is probably a 5 or 6 hour flight. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, they get a bye week, but then you have to go to Wisconsin, and then you get Ohio State. So, like, I see what you're saying. I do wonder, though. It's funny. USC and Michigan are the two teams that have to play all three of the projected playoff teams for the Big Ten. And so for all the other teams on my list, it's really about schedule. I think for Michigan and USC, I know they have the talent to do it, but that schedule's brutal. Mm-hmm. And so USC, I think that USC does not have the same amount of marquee games, but their issues travel. Whereas I think Michigan, I know neither of us are probably big believers in Oklahoma, but they have talent, right? I am a big believer in Iowa, and USC does not have to face Iowa. So, like, I think that is a win. So I think the way I think about it, I agree with you. I think Kyle Whittingham over Lincoln Riley. Michigan lack of travel over USC's travel is advantage Michigan, but USC has less losable games than Michigan.
Well, and how much do these freshmen come in and contribute right away as well, too, right? I mean, these are freshmen coming in, but you're seeing more and more freshmen play in college football than you have before, ever before. I think the past 3 or 4 years have bore that out. And so for me, that's one of the biggest things with USC is how much do these freshmen come in and contribute. I think Jaden Mayava is one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, but he's also going to be throwing to new wide receivers, to new Kyans and guys out there I think are good. I think King Miller is going to come back and be excellent for this team. But, what's the offensive line going to look like? They're bringing back, a number of guys from that offensive line. So, it's not going to be bad, but it's just, it's how is this going to work together? And then the road games that you have. And then the other part that we might be underselling here, Zach, is, is D'Anton Lynn just not a good defensive coordinator? Because that could be possible. He was very inexperienced when he got to USC. Can Gary Patterson come in and take this defense that is filled with athletes? We saw it in the TCU game. We saw all the athletes that this team had on defense. Can Gary Patterson and these new position coaches that they have coming in, because they've basically got all their position coaches going out, and better special teams with Mike Eckler? I think that might be the piece of this that I was not anticipating enough. Now I'm talking myself into USC has better talent than – now I'm going back on what I said. I think at the end of the day, it just has to bear out what does the coaching look like between the two squads. If Gary Patterson can come in and take these athletes on defense and elevate them to another level that D'Anton Lynn could not get them to, I think USC can be a playoff team next. And I still think they can be a playoff team, but I think that's your key to becoming a playoff team. You got the running game. You got Jaden Mayava. Lincoln Riley's going to get his wide receivers right. I feel confident in that. But to me, it's the biggest thing for USC. Once again, can the defense get it right? Can Gary Patterson come in year one? It's tough coming in year one, but it's not like D'Anton Lynn left him with a bunch of scrubs. We saw in that TCU game, they got a lot of athletes, and they got some guys that can make some, and they got some good guys in the portal too. So,
yeah. Can I make one other point, and then we can move on?
Yeah.
I do think, and again, this is in comparison to Michigan and USC because we have them in different places. The thing that does concern me about Michigan that I am not as concerned about with USC, I think Bryce Underwood, the talent is tantalizing, but there were too many things that I saw in his game a year ago that made me it just makes me think, is he really going to get that figured out by year 2? He might. And if they do, then I
down to coaching, right?
Yeah, it comes down to coaching. But even with good coaching, it might take him a while because some of the things that he was doing on tape, you're like, oh man, like that's not like that takes a while to fix. Jaden Mayava, for the most part, is a polished player. And
I think Jaden Mayava is really good, man. I think he's one of the top 5, top 10 QBs in the nation.
Yeah, and I don't think he'll be like I don't think his NFL ceiling is what Bryce could be. But what he is right now, I would take head and shoulders over what Bryce was a year ago. So I think that's part of my calculus too, is which quarterback do I trust? And what have we seen in quarterback, particularly with quarterbacks over the past couple years in the 12-team playoff era? You do better with experience at that position. So I think Mayava coming back, it'll be his 3rd season, not his 3rd full season as starter, but I think third season under Lincoln Riley. I think that bodes well for them.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the season for USC. I think it's going to be an impactful season, and I think honestly, if there's a team in the Big Ten that could lose 3 games and still make the playoffs outside of the top 3 that we talked about that made the playoffs last year, I think USC might be that team.
Yeah.
Because I could see them losing to Indiana, Ohio State, and I don't think they can lose to Oregon. I think if they lose to Oregon, they get the whole thing of like, well, you can't beat big teams. But I could see them losing to Penn State, Ohio State, and Indiana if they beat Oregon, or if they lose to Oregon but beat Ohio State.
Yeah,
I could see them making it in at the very end of the playoff discussion, especially with the SEC being at 9 conference games now.
Yeah. Well, so Sam, he says, win a big road game. Prove me wrong, Riley. I think
that Penn State game, Indiana game.
I was going to say, I think if they beat Indiana, I think they have 9-3 is really hard. Like we have not seen a 9-3 team get in yet. So I'm very skeptical that a 9-3 team would get in, but I think the way USC could do it is if they win a big road game. What bigger road game than against the defending national champions?
It's true. All right, let's get to team number 2, and you and I have the same number 2 team, Zach. It is the Penn State Nittany Lions, and I think you and I are probably going a similar route with this one. Penn State's schedule favorable next season.
Yeah, they get USC at home. Their 2 hardest road games are hard at Michigan, at Washington.
Temple. Oh, not at Temple.
Yeah, not at Temple. Why is Penn State playing at Temple? What are we doing?
I don't know.
What are we doing? Somebody call Pat Kraft right now and yell at him. What are we doing?
I need to text Chris and see if he knows why.
Oh my goodness. To all my friends that are Penn State fans, you guys need to like write a petition and ask, why in the world are we going to Temple? What? You better get Philly cheesesteaks while you're there. it's a combination of schedule and then, Fight on Natties kind of nails it. Penn State, Nittany Cyclones. Like, you've got a new coach, you've got a really good and experienced quarterback who's been under this system for years now.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got the experience advantage. They still have talent. I just think the schedule sets up for them well. I mean, their first 5 games, like Marshall at Temple, at Temple, Buffalo, Wisconsin, at Northwestern. And then they play USC at home. And then they go to Michigan. Like, I think that USC at Michigan combo is tricky. And then going to Washington. So, someone made the point going to Maryland, but I have a sense that Maryland's probably going to be pretty beat up by the end of the season because they're just young. And they're like, yeah, I think it's a favorable setup for Penn State for sure.
Yeah, I think that this is a favorable situation for Penn State. I think that Penn State got a whole lot of experience through the portal. I think that some people are kind of looking down on Rocco Beck a little bit, and like, oh well, he didn't have a great season last year. Also, didn't have any receivers last year, and I think Penn State does have some guys that are going to contribute at receiver this year. I know that's crazy to say, but let me live. Okay, they do have some guys. Chase Sowell is coming in from Iowa State. I think Kobe Howard is going to develop and turn into a better player this season as he continues to develop and get better too. So I think that Penn State's going to have some stuff there. And then also, they do have some guys coming back. Tony Rojas on defense is coming back for this team. I think that Penn State has enough here to go out and go 10-2. Do I think they're gonna go out and would they beat an Ohio State or somebody on their schedule if they were on there? No, I don't think so. But they don't have an Ohio State, they don't have an Oregon, they don't have an Indiana. Their toughest games here are at Washington, at Michigan, and USC. I mean, yeah, at Northwestern, but that's also going to be before Northwestern gets their stadium in there and everything. Like, I look at the schedule and I just say, if anybody has the talent to go 10-2 and anybody has the schedule to go 10-2, Penn State might be the most likely one to do it.
Yep. Yeah.
So I think at that point, it's really a question of, number one, can they actually go 10-2? We'll see. And then number two, is the schedule going to be favorable or too favorable that they don't get in? I tend to think with how much people look at record over everything else, I think if Penn State is 10-2, I think they're going to get in.
Yeah, I think so. But again, we talked about Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana. They play none of those teams. I think they're the only team on either of our lists that does not play a single playoff team from a year ago.
Who was the other one? Penn State and who?
Penn State. I think they're the only one on our list.
Yes, Wisconsin's the other team that doesn't play a playoff team.
They're not on our list.
But they're not on our list. Yeah.
Sorry, Fick.
Yeah. Sorry, Wisconsin fans. Yeah, they're the only ones. Illinois plays Ohio State and Oregon. Yeah. So we'll see. So, all right. Number one for you, number one for you. I think I had them at number 3. The Iowa Hawkeyes. Zach, are you changing here? Do you think this is Kirk Ferentz's year? You were kind of ragging on him before about getting to the playoffs, but you think you can do it this year? All right, let's
do you know how painful this is for me? Do you have any idea how painful? The retirement tour is being held off. It's being held off at least another year. So I know they're replacing the quarterback, but I just look at who's coming back for Iowa. I think they have the coaching staff right. And you look at their schedule. I mean, their toughest stretch is at Michigan, home against Ohio State, and at Washington. Like, that's a tough 3-game stretch. But then you look at the rest of the schedule, it's more favorable than a year ago. And I thought it was somewhat favorable a year ago. At Minnesota, home against Wisconsin, at Northwestern, home against Purdue, at Illinois, and then neutral site against Nebraska, which we know what Iowa does to Nebraska. It's not. And yes, I am okay. No one needs to check on me. No one needs to do a well visit. No one's putting a gun to my head. I mean this. If Iowa goes 1-2 in weeks 4 through 6, I think they're in the playoff.
Yeah, I mean, with their history, with what they're able to do against their rivals, they should be able to sweep at Minnesota, Wisconsin, and home against Nebraska. Really, your toughest one on there left is either at Illinois or at Northwestern.
It'd be at Illinois, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right too. Listen, my biggest thing with Iowa is just the quarterback, because I think they have an outstanding running back room. I think they're going to have an outstanding offensive line. Again, Caden Piper coming back, Trevor Lauk coming back. I think they're going to have an outstanding offensive line. I think Reese Vandersee is going to take a step this next season. We saw him do very well in the Vanderbilt game. I didn't have him as high in my number one wide receiver rankings of teams because we just didn't see enough of him next year, but he was a guy I seriously thought of putting 10-9 in the conference, because I really liked what I saw from him. I just need to see more of it, really. And Phil Parker's gonna have a really good defense once again. They've got a linebacker. I wrote his name down. I need to find it. They got a linebacker that could be really special for them next season as well. What was his name?
Is it Lutmer or Montgomery?
No, Cam Buffington.
Oh, Buffington.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then they have the defensive end, Ios Epinesa, I believe is how you pronounce it. He's a former 5-star. They're going to have him on their defensive line as well. To me, it all comes down to quarterback for Iowa, which is so crazy because they just had Mark Gronowski last year. And I think if you had Mark Gronowski back again this year, I'd be picking it. Iowa's a top 10 team. In all honesty.
If Gronowski was quarterback, I would toy with putting them 12-0.
Yeah.
I'm dead serious.
Yeah, I wouldn't actually do it, but I can see what you're saying by toying with it. I could talk myself into that. I posted about it today on Twitter and got people riled up because people use 8-4 Iowa as a joke now. We talked about it a little bit in our 2014 playoff thing, but people are like, well, if 8-4 Iowa can get into the playoffs, then the playoffs mean nothing. And it's do you not understand how good 8-4 Iowa was last year? Yes, they had the crappy game against Iowa State at the beginning of the season, but that was also when Iowa State was at their best and Mark Gronowski didn't go through the spring. So yes, they should not have lost that game. Give it to them there, but they were also the team that gave the best battle to Indiana. They almost beat Oregon in that game. They were playing very well against USC until the second half. I think that's more of a tribute to USC and what they could do. Honestly, you look at a team like Miami that lost 2 games last year. Iowa played better, against Indiana than Miami played against Notre Dame. Yes, they won that game, but if you look performance-wise, I think Iowa played better in that game. And then Iowa's losses to Iowa State, considering what Iowa State was at the time when they played them, and USC were both better losses than Miami had against Louisville and SMU. So, I get it. People look at it and say, well, 8-4 Iowa. Okay, but that doesn't actually tell you how good of a team this was. This was a team that has sent 9 players to the combine this season. That's second most in the Big Ten. That's tied with Indiana. Second most, the team that won the national championship. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, I think Iowa is in a really good position, coaching wise, development wise, everything else. I think if they can have some of these FCS guys hit, especially guys like Tony Diaz and Evan James, wide receivers for him next season, that can be really good for him. It all comes down to quarterback, whether it's Hank Brown or Ryan Hecklinski. We'll see what happens. I tend to believe Hecklinski is going to be the guy. I think they're going to want to utilize his mobility, especially with this running back room and what they can do with the offensive line and everything else. So if he is at least decent at throwing the ball,
Yeah.
I think this Iowa team goes 10-2 next season and makes the playoffs.
Yeah. I think I just want to address a comment. Good friend of the show, Billy. You guys must have watched a different Gronowski than I did. Listen, Gronowski was not going to wow you, right? When we're talking about Gronowski being good and that he might make Iowa an 11-1 type of team this year, it's not because he was a world beater, but he fit that offense perfectly. His combination of mobility, and he really did progress as a passer throughout the season. And so when you got to the end of the season, was he lighting up the scoreboard? No, like he wasn't. But he was the perfect type of quarterback for that offense, which we haven't seen. Right? Like we're saying that Gronowski was a good Iowa quarterback. He wasn't Petrus. He wasn't Cade McNamara, right? Like dysfunctional quarterback play. That's not what it was. What you need at Iowa to be successful is functional quarterback play. And by week 5, week 6, well, heck, when they played Indiana, Gronowski was a functional quarterback. And we saw what that did. It made them very good against elite teams, right? They were right there with Indiana. They were right there with Oregon. They were right there with USC. And they just beat the jimmies out of Diego Pavia, which was a beautiful thing. And they're going to bring most likely a better offensive and defensive line than most teams they play.
Yeah. Listen, I don't think college football fans are taking into account enough, myself included in this last year, how much leadership and experience does matter with quarterbacks in this era of college football. Mark Gronowski had both of those things. Didn't have a great arm, but toward the end of the season, did you see that pass to Reese Vanderzee in the corner of the end zone in the Vanderbilt game? If you got those passes from Mark Gronowski all year, this was a 10-2 team last season. Yeah. Unfortunately, you didn't get it from him all season because he was coming off of, injury and missed a lot of spring and stuff like that at the beginning of the season, which does affect quarterbacks. Look at DJ Lagway. He missed spring too, and we saw how that looked for him, but he didn't have the leadership. He didn't have the experience. Mark Gronowski did. And I think, Billy, man, I think you would agree with me on this because I think we've talked about it on the show. Like Julian Sayin, more talented quarterback than Will Howard. Julian Sain's going to have a heck of a future in the NFL, and he's a guy with a great arm, quick release, and everything else. You put Will Howard on that Ohio State team last year, I think they make it to the national championship.
Yeah.
Because he had experience, because he had leadership, He
had mobility too.
Mobility, yes. So, to me, that was one of my biggest things with Mark Gronowski. Yes, he was not the most talented passer and everything else. And yeah, he totally fit that narrative of what everybody likes to talk about the Iowa quarterbacks. And don't get me wrong, we cracked our own jokes last year on it too. But I think at the end of the day, we had to give respect where respect was due. And Mark Gronowski was one heck of a college quarterback.
Yeah. And I think to close the loop on it, the reason why Gronowski would be so valuable on this team, you've got one tier 1 game and a couple of toss-up games on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you could lose at Minnesota. You could lose at Illinois, but the likelihood is not as high as losing to USC or losing to Oregon or losing to a Matt Campbell-led Iowa State with Rocco Becht.
Mm-hmm.
But, and by the way, Iowa State's gutted. So that Iowa State's not going to be, I don't think will be an issue for them this year.
No, they're not going to be an issue.
Yeah. So it's a very different schedule than a year ago too. That's if they hit the quarterback, this is a schedule that they can go 10-2 or 11-1.
Agreed. All right. We ready for my honorable mention?
Well, it's your number 5.
Well, it's my number 5. Give me the UCLA Bruins, Zach. Give them to me. All right. I believe in the James Madison Magic. I believe in Bob Chesney. And look, honestly, like, yes, it's gonna sound a little silly. UCLA, not a good team last year. They kind of had a spark for a little bit. I get it. All right, but
Are
you
they
look.
are they still in LA?
Yes, they're still in LA.
Okay, all right. Just
And
want to
Bob
make sure.
Chesney knows that. Don't worry. Uh, but I think this is a team that is going to be able to put it together. Look, they were out there winning transfer portal battles against some of the bigger teams in the country. They got Sahir West away from Ohio State. They got a couple other guys. I talked about it with Kevin on the transfer portal recap, and he did a really good job selling me. So maybe this is just Kevin selling me on it here, but I think this UCLA team is set up well for next year, and I think that Nico Iamaleava, I think that he played a whole lot better than his stats indicated last year. I think he was a heck of a leader. I think that he was a heck of a guy that put his body on the line for the team. I think we're going to see more of that again this year. I think that the offensive line is going to be improved. I think that this defense is going to be better with their coaching and everything else. Look, he's not going to be Kirk Cinetti. Okay, don't put that on Bob Chesney to go out there and be Kirk Cinetti and go 11-1 or anything like that. But when I look at this schedule, when I look at this team, they don't have Ohio State. They go on the road to Oregon, on the road to Michigan, and yeah, they have a road game against Minnesota. They have a road game at the beginning of the year against Cal, and Cal is another team next year that could be taking a big jump too. So to me, I think we're going to know if this UCLA team is legit or not in the very first game of the season. On FanDuel, they already have the odds out for that game. They have Cal favored by 5.5 on that. Look, we don't give out a betting advice here on this channel or anything like that, but I don't like those odds. I don't like 5.5 favored for Cal there. Brand new head coach and Taj Lapoy. Yes, they have a freshman quarterback that's come back, but they have a whole bunch of new transfers in and everything like that. At least with Bob Chesney, his James Madison guys that he's coming in, they have continuity from last year. I think this UCLA team is going to surprise some people next season. I would not be surprised at all to see them go 8-9 or eight or 9 wins, and I could see them even possibly getting to 10 wins.
Yeah, only 5 road games, which that I think that's another
only 4 in the Big Ten too.
Yeah, but those here's the thing: those road games will be the make or break, right? At Maryland, at Oregon, at Minnesota, at Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
If you drop a game that you shouldn't on the road, it's over. And I think that's why, as I thought about Michigan State versus UCLA, they're both long shots, right? But I think the reason why I was a little slower to pull the trigger on UCLA is I think while they don't have many road games, they're all, like, even at Cal, like they all could be tricky, especially obviously at Oregon. The home games though, I mean, I would not be shocked if you tell me that UCLA goes 7-0 at home. I would not be shocked.
Yeah, I would. I would not be shocked either. I mean, you get Illinois at home, USC at home. Yeah.
Yeah. USC would be the toughest one, obviously.
Yeah.
That's the marquee rivalry. But
now, Aiden is bringing up the thing that hurts me the most is they did not give Liam Danitz. And I really wanted them to get Liam Danitz, but I am glad that he went to Wisconsin. I'm glad he's in the Big Ten. I'm glad I get to see Liam Danitz this season. So thank you for Wisconsin. If UCLA couldn't got him, I'm glad that another Big Ten team did. Sam asks, who will they beat? Oregon, Michigan, or USC? At Oregon, at Michigan, USC. Dave with a super chat. Dave, we'll get to that in just a second after we answer this. Thank you so much for the super chat.
I think you could make an argument that there's a pathway for at Michigan or USC. We're not saying it would happen. Like, I just want to be very clear, Sam. We're not saying it'll happen.
Well, yeah, I'm not predicting this will happen. Like I said,
yeah.
Most likely this is my number 5 team.
Yeah.
But if I had to pick, probably USC because it's at home.
Yeah.
But I do not love that pick.
No, I don't either. I think USC, because it's a rivalry game. I will say again, a lot of this depends on Bryce Underwood's development. Like at Michigan, right before the Ohio State game, like does that A, do you catch Michigan looking ahead? And B, has Bryce Underwood actually developed?
That's
Like,
true. That's a good thought.
yeah. So the one where I'm like, no, it's at Oregon, especially because it's at Oregon.
Yeah, it's a good thought. All right, we'll end it here. Dave with the $5 super chat. Thank you, Dave. I look at Minnesota's schedule and see a path to the playoffs for them. Row the boat in Sky U Ma. Zach, do we see a playoff path for Minnesota? I see it. I'm not going to pick it, but I see it. You got Iowa at home, at Indiana, at Penn State. You do have Michigan at home there as well, and you have at Washington. So there is a path here. I think that Minnesota could go 10-2. I think if they had a little bit more brand bias in their favor, I think that they might be a team that could get in at 9-3. But I think unfortunately for Minnesota, I think that they kind of have a little bit of the 8-4 Iowa thing on them there, where if Minnesota goes 9-3, people will say, "Oh, it's a nice story," but they're not necessarily going to believe in Minnesota enough to put them in the playoffs. But what do you think?
Yeah, anything is possible. I certainly don't think it's not there.
I think it's better than anything is possible, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, but I would be closer to 6-6 than 10-2. I'm not picking 6-6. That's not, but
Yeah.
my point in saying that is there are too many toss-up games. And I think even more importantly, there's too many games where I'm like, Minnesota's not going to be favored in this game. Like they're not going to be favored at Washington. They're not going to be favored against Michigan. They're not going to be favored against Iowa. They're not going to be favored against Indiana. They're not going to be favored against Penn State. I'm not sure they're going to be favored at Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And then,
yeah.
Those are just the games that they wouldn't be favored in. UCLA is one where you're like, we dunked on Northwestern quite a bit, but like Northwestern beat them last year. So like I just think there's too many games that are either toss-ups or Minnesota would have to punch up to get them, where I'm like, I don't love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do think that Michigan at home is a better chance for Minnesota than some people think. Because I mean, Minnesota's just a tough place to play, and they do get up for their home games. I would feel better about a 10-2, 9-3 possibility if they had the Washington and the Penn State games at home.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I'm sorry, Dave. I don't want to make you sad. That's not my intent. I'm just trying to
playing good cop, bad cop here. Zach's bad cop right now.
Okay, well, can we agree on something though? They're gonna beat the stuffing out of Mississippi State, and it's gonna be glorious.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Mississippi State. They're gonna get up there. Did you see that? That Florida told their people to limit outdoors time because it was 54 degrees outside.
Gosh. To be fair, I was just
it might be 54 degrees in September at Minnesota. Okay, probably not, but it might be.
So I was
have to limit their outdoors time.
So it is kind of funny. I was in Florida. We went to Florida to escape the cold. We took a cruise, so we got further south. But while I went to Florida and when I was cruising, the fountains froze in Disney World.
Yeah.
Like that's how cold it was in Florida. So I'm like, but still 54. Come on, people. Like that's football weather.
Not down in Florida. It's not down in Florida.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting roasted, Bubba, man. What is this? I do
just
not
not Iowa
love
fans.
making,
Just not Iowa fans tonight, Bubba. He's not making Iowa fans sad.
Oh,
so
I don't like that reputation. I like being happy.
Look, nothing would make me happier. I'm with Billy here. Nothing would make me happier. Okay, a few things might make me happier, but very few things would make me happier than Wisconsin rolling Notre Dame in Lambeau.
Even though
one.
Marcus Freeman's the guy at Notre Dame.
Luke Fickell.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Listen, I don't dislike Notre Dame, but I do think it would be a really, really cool way for Wisconsin to start the season, for Luke Fickell and everything else, for them to have to start the season that way.
That would be a big deal for Fickell.
Yeah.
Like
it's
I almost
this is not about like I don't like Notre Dame and I want them to beat Notre Dame because I don't like. This would be like Luke Fickell having the boost of going from what last season was to getting this win over Notre Dame. That would be pretty special.
If he wins that game, he might get an extension on the spot. Might get a raise on the spot.
Maybe. Who knows? All right. Anything else here, Zach? I think we did a bang up job today.
We did. I agree. I think this was excellent.
Yeah. So don't tell anybody what I said before the show.
What, that we're not going to go 2 hours? That we're not going to go 1 hour?
I told you not to tell anybody, Zach.
That's laid plans. That's laid plans. We talk too much. It's great.
All right, everybody. Hey, we really appreciate you being here with us. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Big Ten Huddle. We are going to get out of here. I am going to go downstairs and watch this Ohio State-Wisconsin basketball game because I am very perplexed at what is going on my television screen right now. Ohio State is winning by 18 points, I think it is. Yeah, 18 points. My math is right. Ohio State might find a way to screw it up still, but
I was just say, is there any way they can still screw this up and lose? Because I've seen that too many.
There is always a way for Ohio State to screw it up at the end of the game, Zach. Don't you worry. But Bruce Thornton's having a really good day, and we'll see what happens for Ohio State. So
I'm ready. I'm ready for Diebler to go.
Oh.
He's the next coach on my retirement tour.
Well, he's about to beat a ranked team in Wisconsin.
Oh, that's fair. Well, don't say that yet. There's 12 minutes left.
Well, yeah. Hey, you heard what Ted Carter said, didn't you? He said he's the next Fred Hoiberg. Do you know who Fred Hoiberg is?
I do. Does Ted Carter know anything about sports?
He was listed off the roster of the football team and the basketball team and everything.
Okay, did he have the roster in front of him?
Well, he may have overlooked it a little bit, yeah.
He's a smart guy. He may not be a sports guy.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. Zach and I will be back on Sunday night. Just be looking in your feed. I'll have episodes later on in the week. I'm going to have Thursday night, going to have a bracketologist, Jason, come on. We might make that a weekly thing here throughout the rest of the season, talk about all the teams. So you'll get that Friday morning. And then Saturday night, we're going to do a live stream after the UCLA-Illinois game. So come on over here after that one. And then I'll probably go live after the IU Purdue game on Friday night as well. So come on in this weekend. Got some live shows coming up, basketball centric kind of stuff. We appreciate you being here. Have a good one. See you next time.